Hey horror friends, how's it going? Welcome to the channel. Today we're doing a ranking video of the 80s horror films that I watched for my 30-day challenge for September. If you haven't watched that video, you can go ahead and watch it before you watch this one, but you don't necessarily have to. It was just me going over the list of movies that I watched in September. They were all 80s horror movies that I had never seen before, and I had kind of kicked around the idea of doing a ranking video of all of those movies after I watched them, and so that's what I'm going to be doing today. And so I've never done one of these before. I was going to use tiermaker.com or whatever that one is, but it wanted me to like hook up my Twitter to the account or something. I don't know. So I abandoned that and I just went to Canva and found a template for it. So it's still going to be the S tier through D tier. So S, A, B, C, and D. S being superior, like the best. A is still pretty good. B is okay, but there were some issues. C is meh. And D being the worst. So the way that I'm going to rank them kind of correlates with my Letterboxd. So I try to rate and review all of the movies that I watch on Letterboxd, and I'm going to kind of go with matching up star ratings to the levels on the tier. So what I'm going to do is movies that I rated 0 to 1 stars will be D, 1.5 stars to 2 stars will be C, 2.5 to 3 B, 3.5 to 4 A, and 4.5 to 5 S tier. Also on Letterboxd, you can put a heart for if you loved a film, even though you didn't think it was worth, a 5-star rating, but you still really liked it, you can add the heart. So I did have hearts for some of these movies, and that might affect my ranking. So if it's maybe on the borderline of being between 2 tiers and I gave it a heart, it might bump it up a tier higher. And then I'll just talk a little bit about each movie as I rank them. We'll go ahead and get started with the first movie that I watched. I'm going to go in order of how I watched them, which was also in order of their release dates. So movies from 1980 through 1989. So we're starting out with 1980 with Alligator. And Alligator, it was a fun movie. I had a good time with it. By no means would I say it was an excellent film, but still entertaining and a fun watch. So I gave it 2 stars, and that means that it is going to go on the C tier. So next up is The Changeling, also from 1980, and this is one that I was excited for because I had heard some really good things about it. I had heard that it was a really solid ghost story, and of course that George C. Scott's performance was really good. So yeah, this is one that I've been wanting to watch for quite a while, and obviously very glad that I did. I think that it definitely lived up to most of the hype. I would say watching it from a 2022 lens, it seemed like it was maybe a little bit cliched in certain ways, but it's just because those are all things that we are used to seeing in ghost stories, like certain things that happen throughout the film. So it seems a little bit, old hat, but at the time, I'm sure it was new and exciting. So I have to take that into regard, but for those reasons, I did give it 3.5 stars. So that still puts it in A tier. I didn't give it a heart because I didn't quite love it, but it was still really good. So The Changeling is going in A tier. Next, we have John Carpenter's The Fog. This is one that I really, really loved the atmosphere of. I liked all of the characters in it. The setting was super cool. It was really creepy. There were some pretty unsettling moments. And, just the fog being this really ominous force throughout the movie, I thought was super cool. So I gave this one 3.5 stars and a heart. So that's still going to place it in A tier, which again, still really good, really solid film. Next up is Prom Night, the Jamie Lee Curtis film, of course. And this is one that I was expecting to be a pretty solid slasher, maybe not groundbreaking by any means, but I will say I was pretty bored by this movie. I just felt like there was not a lot happening. A lot of dancing was happening, but Not so much, slasher things. The kills we did get were mostly off screen. Yeah, I was pretty disappointed by this one, I gotta be honest. And I gave it 1.5 stars, which is gonna put it on the C tier, joining Alligator, although I had a lot more fun with Alligator, I will say. Next on the list, we have Terror Train, another Jamie Lee Curtis flick, and this one I did like a little bit more than Prom Night. I thought the concept was more interesting. The whole train setting was pretty cool. The costumes are fun, and I think the characters were okay. And I think the third act was pretty good. I would say, like, if the rest of the movie were like the third act, I would have liked it a lot more, but it just felt like kind of a slow burn to get there. So for that reason, I gave it 2 stars, and that's going to be another one for the C tier. Next up, we have The Howling from 1981, the Joe Dante film, which I was not expecting to like as much as I did. I gotta be honest, I was kind of surprised. I was not expecting to find the story super compelling because I'd heard a little bit about it, but I was really intrigued by the way they went with it and the different elements of media and how we consume it in different ways. And I felt like Dee Wallace did an amazing job with her character. I don't think that the special effects, there were some that I thought were a little subpar, but then there are others that looked really good even by today's standards. So it was kind of a mixed bag in that regard. But overall, I was left just thinking about it after I finished watching it, which is a big thing I look for in a film. If it's something that lingers in my mind, that I keep thinking about, in a good way, obviously. So that's definitely a bonus for me. And yeah, this is just a really good entry into the werewolf subgenre. Definitely deserves the love that it gets, I think. So I gave The Howling 3.5 stars and a heart. So that is still gonna put it on A tier. I don't think that the heart is gonna bump it up to S tier for me personally. So right now we've just are rocking with A and C. Next up is Creepshow from 82, the George Romero and Stephen King crossover film. I really enjoyed this one. I loved the, comic book setup, the wraparound story, and even all the little shots within each of the stories where we got really comic booky illustrations or, the frame and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. I do think that the stories, there was definitely a variety and quality for the individual stories. So there were some that I liked more than others, which of course is going to be the deal with pretty much any anthology film. But I would say that for that reason, because it was a little uneven and because it was just a little too long again, I think they could have maybe taken out at least one of the stories. I gave it 3.5 stars, but I still gave it a heart. And this is another one that I'm just not going to bump up to S tier because of the heart. So for that reason, we are getting another A tier movie with Creepshow. And I will say there were a lot of movies that I gave 3.5 stars on my 80s watch list. I'm not sure why. I just felt like they weren't quite good enough in my opinion to give 4 stars, but I didn't feel right giving them anything less than 3, so I just settled on 3.5 for those. So you're going to see that number come up quite a bit. But the next one I did not give 3.5 stars, and that is the Cat People remake from 1982. And yeah, this one, I think it was just doing a little bit too much. With the original, it's so reliant on the subtlety, and it's really laid back in the scares and stuff like that. I mean, they're still very scary, but Cat People, the remake, just kind of went the opposite direction. It was really over the top, and it was really long, too. They were just trying to kind of overcomplicate the reason behind why the people were cat people, and I could have really just done without that. Still, it was well shot and the acting was good. So I gave it 2.5 stars, right in the middle. So that's going to put it at the B level. So that's our first movie in the B level. Next up is Next of Kin, the Australian ghost story from 1982. And this is one that I really had high hopes for. I had heard some really good things about it. I had heard that it was really underrated. And so for that reason, I think that I had my expectations set a little bit too high and it just didn't quite meet those. It was still beautifully shot and there were some genuinely creepy moments, but it was definitely more of a slow burn than I would have liked. And I just think the payoff wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be. The ending, I don't want to spoil it, but it was a pretty bonkers ending, but I just wish that there had been a little bit more, I don't know, like tension throughout. I did say in my review that John Jarratt is really hot in this movie, and I mean, it's worth the watch regardless of that, but that definitely helped. So I still gave it 3 stars, which is going to put it at the B tier, which I think is a good spot for it. Next up, we have Christine, John Carpenter's Christine, of course, from 1983, The Killer Car, and I was really blown away by this movie. I had seen some shots from it, so I wasn't going in totally blind. Like, I had seen the scene where the car rebuilds itself. Even though I had seen that before, I was still really impressed by that. And all of the practical effects in this film were just really great. I thought that the story was simple yet super effective. And the acting from all of our leads, but especially Arnie. I'm blanking on the actor's name right now, but he did an incredible job showing the character arc of Arnie. And it did just fall a little bit flat at the end. It wasn't quite as climactic as I was hoping for, but it still made sense within the context of the movie. So for that reason, I did not give it a full 5 stars, but I did give it 4 stars and a heart. So this is going to be our first S-tier movie, Christine. I definitely think it deserves that spot for sure. So after Christine, I watched Angst, or Angst, the German film, also from 1983. And this is one that I was prepared to be a hard watch. I had heard that it was pretty brutal and gruesome, and it definitely lived up to that for sure. It was what I described in my Letterboxd review. I said it was grueling. So it was just like long, drawn out shots of this guy committing murder. And it was definitely disturbing. And that's obviously what a lot of horror films go for. It's not one that I will probably ever watch again. Maybe if I have enough space between this watch. So several years in the future, I don't know, I'll consider revisiting it. So I think it definitely did a good job at making me uncomfortable. But at the same time, I don't know if it was just not for me. I mean, it was kind of artful. I'm not really explaining it very well, but I was just kind of torn on what to rate it, basically. So I ended up just giving it 2.5 stars, so right in the middle. So that is going to put it on the B tier, which I think that's a good spot for it. Okay, after that, I watched The Company of Wolves from 1984 with Angela Lansbury. And y'all, this film was just so beautiful to look at. It was exactly my aesthetic, the kind of aesthetic that I like to see in movies. It's this really cozy folk horror with these period costumes and just the cinematography, the way it's shot, where everything's kind of like hazy and dreamlike. I really love that kind of filmmaking. So I was kind of a sucker right from the get-go. It was also a little bit anthology-like in that our main character, Rosaline, she is dreaming. And so within this dream, there are a bunch of different things happening. Like she'll be with her grandma and then her grandma will tell her a story. So we'll go off into the story for a little bit. So I wasn't expecting that, but I did enjoy that kind of format. And it wasn't groundbreaking by any means in the stories being told, but they were still really entertaining. And again, like I said, just beautiful to look at. So I did give it 3.5 stars, but I gave it a heart too because I really enjoyed it. And it's one that I'll definitely go back and watch in the future. So that's definitely going to make it an A tier movie for me. Next is Razorback from 1984. This is the killer boar movie. It felt very Jaws-like in the way that we were seeing the boar, and it would come and go very quickly, things like that. Again, another film with really good cinematography. This is one that I don't remember much about besides the boar, and just kind of the visuals of it. So it wasn't like super mind-blowing or super impressive for me, but it also by no means was bad. So I gave it 3 stars, and that's going to put it at the B tier. Night of the Comet from 1984 is next, and this one was really fun. I definitely had a good time with it. I really liked our 2 main girls. They were really likable, as well as Hector. I thought that he was a cool character too. Just the whole setup of the plot and how they're some of the only people left alive on Earth after this event happens. I won't go into too much detail on it, but yeah, I did feel like there were some parts where it was a little slow moving when they're kind of chilling at the radio station. I felt like they could have sped those scenes up a little bit, but still definitely a really fun movie, and that's why I gave it a heart, and I also gave it 3 stars, so this is another B tier film. Next up is The Stuff from 1985, and this is one that I'd seen a lot of imagery from, and I was very familiar with just the concept of the stuff, and it kind of lived up to all the expectations I had of it. There were some issues with the editing. I think that things were a little bit scatterbrained and we were kind of jumping all over the place, and there were just some plot lines and things that I felt like weren't super fleshed out. I did like our lead, Mo Rutherford. I thought that he was really endearing and entertaining, and obviously just like the idea of the stuff and what it represents and the whole metaphor of the film with 80s consumerism amongst many other things. But yeah, so I think that it could have been executed a little better, and there were definitely some effects that I thought did not look very great. So I gave it 3 stars, just a little bit above average, and that's mostly for the overall concept, but not so much the actual filmmaking. So we're getting another B tier film. Right now, B tier has the most, but I have a feeling that one of them is going to surpass it here in a little bit, but I'm not going to spoil which tier. And next is Vamp from 1986, the film with Grace Jones as a vampire stripper, which just that alone is a great concept. I love how this movie is kind of a fake out at the beginning. You think it's a flashback when it's really this fraternity initiation ritual. So that really caught me off guard in a good way. And from there, it was just a really fun ride. I thought that Grace Jones as Katrina was super mesmerizing, and her performance was really captivating, even though she does not talk at all. There were some really good effects in this one. I was really impressed by some of the vampire effects and the makeup. And yeah, just overall, a really fun time. So I gave this one 3.5 stars and a heart, and that is putting it in A tier. Next up was Night of the Creeps from 1986, and this is one that I just really loved all of the homages to classic horror and sci-fi films. There was so much packed into this movie, so many references, just the names of the characters for one thing. That was really fun, and I think sometimes that can be a little bit cheesy and overdone, but I think that it really fit the mood and the tone of this movie, so I was not mad at it for that. And I just really enjoyed Tom Atkins' character. I thought that he was really compelling and kind of sad, but also really funny. I just think he did a really good job, and the rest of the cast was good too. This is another one that I really enjoyed the effects from, and yeah, just the whole concept. how we've got the aliens at the beginning and the flashback, and then the 80s setting as well. So all of that really worked for me. It's by no means a perfect movie, but it was still a really good time. So it's getting 3.5 stars and a heart, just like Vamp. So it's gonna go right next to Vamp on A tier. After that, I watched From Beyond, the adaptation of the H.P. Lovecraft story directed by Stuart Gordon. And I gotta say, this one just really wasn't for me. And I don't know if it's just me not liking Stuart Gordon films, because the ones I've watched of his in the past, like Castle Freak and Reanimator, I wasn't a huge fan of either. So I don't know if it's just his style, but I felt like it was just really thin in character development, and I just wasn't super grabbed by the story. I think that I'd heard that he used to work in theater, and so his the way that he shoots his movies is very stage-like, and I just don't know if I like that. I also wasn't super impressed by the special effects. I thought some of them looked pretty goofy and just not really scary. So yeah, I don't know. This one just really wasn't for me, guys. So I just gave it 2.5 stars, and that's gonna put it on B tier. Next up, we have The Stepfather from 1987, the original, of course. And I was just really into the fall vibes of this movie. It's one that I might revisit every fall because it's just so cozy, and yeah, the setting was just really good. And I think that Terry O'Quinn, our lead as the titular stepfather, did a really excellent job. I thought his performance was really convincing, and he really committed to the role. There was one thing that I mentioned in my review on Letterboxd that just knocked off more than 1 point for me, and it was the super unnecessary scene where his adopted daughter, or stepdaughter, very clearly established that she is 16 years old. The actress was in her early 20s when the movie was filmed, but they still had her shoot this scene where she is taking a shower and we see her nude, and I was like, this character is very clearly established to be underage. Why the hell are we seeing her naked? So if it weren't for that, I don't know. I don't know if it would have gotten 4 stars from me, but it would have at least gotten 3.5. So I had to knock off some points for that, but overall still a really solid thriller-esque slasher. So I gave it 3 stars and a heart, but that's still gonna put it on B tier. After that, I watched The Gate, also from 1987, and this one was really, really cute. I'm sure some people laugh when I say that as a descriptor, because I'm sure if you saw this as a kid, it would have been very traumatizing to you. But I just really loved all of the characters. I absolutely loved the relationship between the main kid and his older sister. Forgive me, I can't remember their names right now, but I just thought that that was a really nice touch that this movie had, because you don't see that a ton, especially not in horror movies, where it's kind of exploring this bond between an older sister and a younger brother. So I really liked that. And the practical effects of this one were really well done. I really liked all of the forced perspective stuff with the little demons or whatever those things are that come out of the gate. Yeah, and it was really unique, the overall concept of the film, and it was basically just about like familial love and friendship, and I just really liked that. So this is another 3.5 stars and a heart movie for me. So that's gonna put it on A tier, and we are catching up with B tier slowly but surely. Next up, we have Prince of Darkness, another John Carpenter film. Unfortunately, one I did not like as much as Christine or The Fog. So I was just really put off by all of the scientific jargon happening in this movie. There's a lot of convoluted dialogue that just really had me tuning out. For the first, it seemed like hour of the film, it was just that, basically, with like little snippets of what was to come in the third act, and I just was getting bored waiting for that to happen. Thank God it did pick up at the very end, and I do think that the third act really goes off the rails in a good way. So I think that the story was really interesting, and this combination of science and religion coming together, but I think the execution was leaving a lot to be desired, at least for me. So this is another one that I gave 2.5 stars, and it is going to go on the B tier. Going from Carpenter to Craven with The Serpent and the Rainbow. And I liked this film. I didn't love it. I was a little bit hesitant to give it a super high rating simply because I do think that the representation of Haitian people probably wasn't the most accurate. I definitely need to do some more research on that front. But yeah, I'm just a little bit weary when I see that there's white people making a movie about a Black culture. So for that reason, I knocked it a couple points, but it wasn't just that. There were definitely other things that are why I didn't give it a 5-star rating, but still, it's a pretty solid film. There's some genuinely creepy moments that happen, and I think Bill Pullman absolutely kills it as the lead. So I gave it 3.5 stars. No heart for this one, though. So we're still going A tier. Next up was the sleeper hit of this entire list for me, and that is Waxwork from 1988. I was not expecting to like this movie as much as I did. I really didn't know much about it at all, besides the fact that it was set in a wax museum. And I was thinking like, okay, it's probably going to be like some sort of knockoff of House of Wax or something like that. It absolutely was not that. It was kind of sort of an anthology with the way that these different characters enter into a waxworks exhibit. They enter into the world of that figure, and we kind of just get these little subsections of different classic horror movie concepts. So like a werewolf, vampire, amongst other things. And it was just so much fun. As soon as I finished it, I wanted to watch it again, which is not something I can say about many movies that I've seen. The acting was super fun. Some of it was over the top. Some of it was actually really good. I'm thinking of the lead actress who, I'm sorry guys, I didn't really look up anyone's names. So if I didn't already know them, like Bill Pullman, it's just, I'm gonna have to like put it on the screen or something. But she's also in April Fool's Day. She's like the lead in that one. So she did an excellent job. Her acting was great. There were also some just really funny gags. The way that the little butler guy, every time he would bow, there'd be this really goofy whoosh sound effects. So stuff like that I was just highly entertained by. And the end goes off the rails. It's bonkers in the best way. So I gave Waxwork 4 stars and a heart. So that makes it our second S tier movie, right next to Christine. So I watched this one out of order. The next one is Fright Night, which is from 1985. So we're backtracking a little bit. I was putting it off because I was trying to watch it with a friend and he ended up not being able to. So I'd kind of pushed off my watch of it and went a little out of order with the release dates of the film. So and this is one that I had some really high expectations for because a lot of people cite it as one of their favorite horror movies of all time. And I had a really good time watching it. It was a fun ride. By no means would I say it's a perfect movie, but obviously that's few and far between. So still really enjoyable, a really cool twist on the vampire subgenre, having it set in this suburban environment and having it be this teenager's neighbor. So I really liked the setting a lot, and I thought that the effects, again, were really good. Obviously, a lot of these 80s films have some really stellar practical effects, and I thought that this one was no different. So this is yet another 3.5 star and a heart film for me, which is, again, gonna put it on the A tier. All right, bouncing back to the correct part of the timeline, which is 1988, and so the next movie I watched was The Blob. And again, like I just said, practical effects. This movie just absolutely killed the Blob effects. I mean, I was so impressed by them. I was a little bit bummed because I had rented the standard definition version on Amazon Prime, and for some reason that version was looking really terrible on my TV. I don't know what was going on. I was really kicking myself for not renting the HD version. But regardless of that, I could still tell that the blob effects were really good. Again, I really liked the characters. I loved seeing a young Shawnee Smith in this movie. It was so fun. And then Kevin Dillon also did a really good job in his role as our lead teenager. And yeah, conceptually very cool. I'm not usually one for horror movies where the villain is this kind of like inhuman, unthinking, unfeeling thing, this force that's just kind of doing what it wants to do. But I think that this one is probably the best of those types of movies that I have seen. I definitely could have used some more character development just personally to endear us a little bit more to the characters. But just in general, it's a super solid film and definitely one that deserves all of the credit it gets for being a killer practical effect movie from the 80s and one of the best horror remakes in general. So this is yet another 3.5 star and heart film going on the A tier. So I'm going to sound a little redundant with this next one with my ranking, but bear with me. This next one is Elvira, Mistress of the Dark from 88. And I have never seen any Elvira content whatsoever. I mean, I know her whole shtick, kind of what she's about, but actually watching it in action was really cool. And it kind of lived up to exactly what I thought it was going to. It was really cheesy, really campy, really corny, and really fun. Yeah, it's just a good time and some really good fall vibes with this movie as well. Just being set in the, Eastern United States around fall time. Really, really pretty setting. Cassandra Peterson just absolutely embodies the role of Elvira so well. She does such a good job carrying off the character. And it's just a breezy, entertaining film that I could definitely see myself going back to, especially around autumn every year. Another 3.5 star in heart movie and another A tier film. I'm running out of room on the A tier, guys, and it's just gonna keep getting smaller because the next film is They Live from 1988, another John Carpenter film, and another one that I did really like. I loved the concept of, these alien beings being this force that is trying to have these humans consume and not think and just be participants in this capitalist society. And obviously that's pretty much what we're living like now. Maybe sans aliens, maybe not, who knows. But it just really hit home for me. A lot of the ideas and meaning behind it are very pertinent to today, very much what we're still living, at least in America. I feel like it's still very relevant to today's society. So for that reason, it was definitely resonating with me and deserving of a 3.5 star and heart rating and also putting it on A tier. All right, the last three, and these last three movies are from 89, the first of which being The Church, the Italian film. I love me a good religious themed horror movie, and this obviously being called The Church, I was expecting to see a lot of that, and having it be set basically in a church for the whole time, we got those vibes for sure. And some bad dubbing, which I always think is entertaining. We had some pretty cool effects and makeup and stuff. It was just a little bit few and far between. One scene that did stand out to me as far as effects goes, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I'll just mention the train scene. That one literally made me laugh out loud with what happened. But I mean, it didn't really blow me away. It wasn't super outstanding by any means, even when we're just considering Italian horror, but still really solid, still an entertaining movie. So I gave it 2.5 stars, putting it right in the middle and earning it a spot on the B tier. Next up is Puppet Master, and I'll just give you guys my Letterboxd review for this one. It is short and sweet. I just said snooze fest. I found this movie to be really boring. I thought that the setup with like the magicians, there was just a lot of talking happening and not enough puppet action. When we did get the puppets, we didn't really see them kill anyone. And Basically, we got some long extended scenes of POV shots of them just running around, or like Blade dragging a chair across the floor for what felt like 5 minutes. So definitely not considered exciting by any means. And the effects were meh. The little puppet with like the tiny head and the huge hands, where it's very clearly just people hands, that was pretty funny. But other than that, I really was not very entertained by this movie. And for that reason, I gave it 1 star, which makes it the first movie on the D tier. And last but not least, the last movie on my 80s watch list for September was Sangre. And this is the first Jodorowsky film I've ever seen. I was expecting it to be really weird and out there, and it absolutely was. It was very artsy, and there was a lot going on visually. Again, like I said with the church, we had some religious imagery, which really resonates with me. As an ex-Catholic, a lot of that stuff I just find really compelling. So it was interesting getting that aspect of it, as well as all the visuals and characters from the circus aspect. So I thought that the combination of those two things was super interesting. Our lead was very compelling. The way that he was telling the story without having the characters speak very much was super interesting. Lots of memorable visuals. And like I said before, if a movie can make me think about it after the credits roll, and especially like the day after or the day after that, I'm very inclined to give it a higher rating, because that just meant that it was really interesting and had a lot of stuff that I could parse through and really chew on. So that's how I felt about Sangre. It's definitely not going to be for everyone. I'm sure there are plenty of people who watch this movie and absolutely hate it. I was not one of those people though, and I gave it 4 stars. And that would put it on the A tier, but something in my gut is telling me that I need to rank it higher. So I'm going to kind of break my rule for this one, and I'm going to put it on the S tier. So that is my ranking of the 80s horror films that I watched in September. That's 30 films. We have 1 D tier, 3 C tier, 10 B tier, 13 A tier, and 3 S tier films. So I'd say my first ranking video is a success, and if you see a movie on here where you're like, how could you put it on that tier? You're so wrong for that. Let me know. I'll hear you out, and maybe I'll give that movie another watch. Or if you agree with me and you think that certain films deserved exactly where they're at, let me know that too. I'm really glad that I did this and knocked out all of these 80s films that I had never seen before. I had a blast watching all of them, even the ones that I was bored by. I'm still so glad that I did it. I wouldn't take it back, and now I can actually talk about them with you guys. There's so many that people have brought up before, and I kicked myself every time being like, I haven't seen that yet, I haven't seen that yet. So finally I knocked out a decent amount. There's still plenty of 80s horror that I haven't seen, and I will obviously continue to watch the ones I haven't seen, but there are definitely some on this list that I'm really excited to revisit as well. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you liked this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Would love to have you here with my little horror family. So yeah, thanks so much for watching again. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and we'll talk horror next time.